Right now, summer sports are in full swing. Baseball is firing on all cylinders, and there's a certain soccer tournament the world's watching. Something you should be watching is your vehicle's engine. That's why Pennzoil Synthetics gives you complete protection for top engine performance. Pennzoil. Make the switch.
Listen up, people. We got a big favor to ask, and we promise it won't take too much of your time. You know our show's supported by some fantastic sponsors, right? Well, we'd love to hear your feedback. Head to ESPNPodcastStudy.com and fill out a short, anonymous survey. That's it. We swear. No more. Again, that's ESPNPodcastStudy.com.
This is the best of Golic and Wingo podcast.
Today, there's a parade in the Bay Area to celebrate another Golden State Warriors championship. But are we obsessed with talking about their greatness, or are we obsessed with their dynasty? Not even close. We skipped all that and went straight into the summer of LeBron, and it sounds like Kevin Durant might be in all the feels because of it. We'll get into it. It's Golic and Wingo, Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr. I'm Jason Fitz in for Trey. Good morning, Golic.
What's up, man? How you doing?
Man, it's so good. So good. I like that. What we got, sprinkles are for championships and pugs, not drugs, and Mario Brothers.
The trickle down effect of Jason Fitz's presence on the show automatically lowers our professional dress code. For anyone that's not watching right now, anyone that's listening on ESPN radio, Jason Fitz walks in with the goofiest shirts on planet Earth. Usually,
he does.
He wears shirts of someone half his age. He's the sneakiest 40-year-old on the planet. Dad's shirt's got an ice cream cone and sprinkles on it, and mine's got a cartoon pug. This is the front that ESPN wants put out there to start your day.
It fits so perfectly. I mean, we've worn these shirts before. This is back from the Cavs championship when sprinkles are for champions, you know, and they were champions, so they got some sprinkles on their ice cream cone. But yeah, it just kind of seems to fit more when you're around because you truly are a child.
So what you guys are telling me is that you look at the calendar and you're like, ooh, Fitz is in. We can have a little fun.
No, we just said, Fitz is in. We got to dress down today.
Yeah, exactly. It's like when you got dress down days in high school. You get to walk in and know it's just everything matters a little less today.
That's exactly right.
You know, and maybe to you guys, but this is moving up. I put a fancy shirt on top of Mario, so I feel like I'm really.
That's a fancy shirt, huh? The old denim button down.
Yeah, well, you know, I try.
All you need is some denim jeans, and you have the Canadian tuxedo, and you're all set to go.
Or the full Will Kane. I've gone full Will Kane if I can just get denim. On denim. We got a lot to get into, obviously, with Golden State, and we'll do that. But first, let's get into a little of what's trending. The Stanley Cup champion Capitals will celebrate the city's first major I'll try that again.
Try that again.
We'll just go all over again. The Stanley Cup champion Capitals will celebrate the city's first major four pro sports championship in 26 years with a parade down Constitution Avenue this morning.
Yeah, you got to go back to the Redskins back in 92, the last time they had a champion there. We're able to celebrate. And let me tell you, this is a continuation of the celebration. The pictures of Ovi, Alex Ovechkin, I said Alan twice, I think, with him. Celebrating after the win. The only sober time he had was when he was on the ice holding the cup over his head. By the time 10 minutes into the locker room, he's been drunk and been drunk ever since. And more power to him. The tweets out there that were telling those guys to act like you've been there before, I wanted to just retch. I mean, it's the first title they've ever won, the first title in that town in a couple of decades, and they are having a ball with it, and more power to them.
I operate by one core principle when it comes to the world of sports. If you have the chance to stunt, you stunt. Alexander Ovechkin and the Capitals are stunting right now. I use the G given the clientele here, but Ovi's pictures have been wrong. This guy was built for this guy was built for this post celebration, right? He already looks like a walking hangover, and now he gets to be one.
Yeah. Let's also remember too, hockey players, it's not like they don't know how to party throughout the course of the year. That's true. So now you add a Stanley Cup to it, especially as a guy that I don't win things. I just get nominated for them in my life, and I still tattoo them on my arm. Like, what would I do if I actually won something major? Like Betty Ford. Give me a few weeks. And then
these guys look like cavemen with no teeth that are just kind of walking around, drunken with hangovers. But Fitzy, who loses in this? Who loses in Washington?
Oh, my gosh, yeah. So the losses today.
Is this unreal?
This is incredible to me. Planned months ago, the Redskins are acknowledging the replacement strike players from the 1987 Super Bowl.
Back when I was playing and we went on strike, the replacement players played those 3 games out there, and the Washington Redskins, They won them. They did really well with their replacement players.
Right. They went 3-0 with their replacement players. They won the Super Bowl, and their guys never got rings.
Right.
And so this has been, they made a documentary on it. So they're bringing Charlie Casserly, the GM at the time, back to present rings to the replacement players. They're doing it today.
Today? I mean, what are the odds of that?
You want to go back and throw rocks at them for old time's sake?
I know. That's pretty bad.
I'm just saying,
it's
remarkable that the replacement players are being replaced on parade day. I heard the bomb. I heard the bomb, guys. Next up, wait, I got to hit this little.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's also parade day in Oakland. The Warriors' third parade in 4 years will begin at 11 a.m. at the corner of Broadway and 11th Street. Head straight down Broadway until it turns right at 20th Street and Thomas L. Berkeley Way, right again at Harrison Street. I love that we're giving everybody directions. We're just going to go on a path. We're going to go on a path, and people will have a parade.
This is great. Listen, these parades, we know the players. I'm sure like them. Maybe some not as much as others. It's for the fans. The fans will go out there and really acknowledge the players, and the players to acknowledge the fans as well.
Wait. Are you downplaying parades?
I'm not a huge parade guy. I'm not a huge parade. Now, in this instance,
I don't even know.
I would dig it if I were one of the players because it would a lot of bad things would be going on during the parade. But overall, I'm not a monster parade guy.
It makes sense that Fitz would like parades because they're essentially mobile concerts. Like all that is you basically took a concert stage and just moved it throughout the course of a city. I can understand your affinity for them. I enjoy anything that allows you to be drunk outdoors. That's why to me golf is so appealing.
Yep.
That's why parades would be appealing because you get to be drunk and it looks like it's going to be nice outside. And 11 a.m. Pacific, by the way, if you show up at 11 a.m. Eastern, you will likely be showing up to nothing but ruin and decay.
Good point.
It is being pointed out to me that they're expecting over 1 million people. So
that's great. That's cool.
I'm giving the streets to help with that. Get out there early, guys. Get out there early, and you know what? Party responsibly. Just get out there and be safe.
You can't drink all day if you don't start in the morning, guys.
That's true. Can I give one incredibly long-distance connection to the Washington Capitals?
No, just don't do it.
And the Golden State Warriors?
What if I say no?
No, his name's on the show. We can't do anything about it.
The Capitals in their first season, 1974-75.
So's mine.
Went 8-67-5 in their first season. Their only road win came March 28, 1975 against the California Golden Seals at what was then the Oakland Alameda County Coliseum, which is now Oracle. They won their only road game in that building where Golden State plays, I think, for one more season before they're going to get a new arena. That's a pretty cool little connection.
I'm not going to lie. I was getting ready to rip you for it, and everyone in my ear wants me to rip you for it. I thought that stat was pretty cool, and I would love for some Golden Seals gear.
I think that is cool, and I'm completely agreeing.
Golden Seals throwback gear?
I think two cool things. You stop with the clock. We need to get rid of the clock.
I'll take the cool gear. I will never get that 30 seconds back from that awful stat.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me!
In Major League Baseball, the best part about getting this is I get to have the last word.
You gave in to Stanzik.
No, they didn't even tell me to. That was just
I can see Stanzik's hand moving around inside your mouth.
Gentlemen, I hit the. All right, that means we move forward.
I only could see that because his hand just came out of my mouth.
Bryce Harper and the NL East leading Washington Nationals beginning 2-game series in the AL East against the AL East leading New York Yankees tonight.
Oh, okay, that was it.
That was it. That's all I was giving you. Yeah.
Make you look bad now since you ripped my stat. So here's the deal. I mean, the Yankees, we know what's going on with them. We're going to talk plenty about it leading up to the trade deadline of them trying to get a pitcher to finish out the season, a starting pitcher. Bryce Harper has been interesting. The first 10 games of the season, he was, hitting 345. Since then, 210, averaging a home run every 5 at-bats in the first 10 games, now every 15 at-bats. But he is leading the way with 19 home runs. We know what kind of hitter he's in. He hasn't hit the ball great on his last, I think, 40 or 50 at-bats, something like that. But you look at right now, the leading contenders out of the American League and the National League, they're tied to reach the World Series. It's the Yankees or Astros right now, both at the same odds, and it's the Nationals and Cubs who have the same odds to come out of the National League.
It's amazing. So we talk about that, them being at the forefront of the conversation. Bryce Harper being a name that we've known for a while, a guy who's actually sort of an edgy personality. And for so long, all we talked about was Bryce Harper, free agency this coming year, $500 million contract coming from the Yankees. how quickly has he faded into the background? This is like Steph Curry. The Steph Curry zenith after that first MVP to where he is now. I don't understand it. Bryce Harper seemed to be exactly what baseball needed, make baseball fun again, and yet he can't buy a headline. He can't buy a conversation.
That's the interesting part of it, because early in the season, everybody was exploding on it. It's also interesting to me, Mike, you talk about how the Nationals are so highly regarded, but how many teams can you talk about at this point? The Nationals are 15-16 at home. Yeah. 21-11 on the road. So they're substantially better on the road. Doesn't fit the narrative of what anybody expects at this point. So interesting that's where they are. By the way, Yankees and Nationals will both look to protect their leads atop their respective divisions. Protecting the lead brought to you by ADT. Considering home security? Consider this. For 140 years, ADT has helped stop more crime than any other home security system. Visit ADT.com to learn more. And lastly, according to ESPN's Dan Raphael, Deontay Wilder has accepted the terms offered to him by Anthony Joshua's promoter for the two champions to meet for the undisputed heavyweight championship this fall.
Listen, we've been waiting for a big-time heavyweight fight, right? I know growing up, now there were some great, obviously with Sugar Ray and Hearns and Hagler, there were some great, non-heavyweights, but we lived for the heavyweight fights. And you look at these guys, Joshua 6'6", 249. Dude is chiseled. You look at Wilder 6'7", 227. Two big dudes. 21-0 is Joshua with 20 knockouts. Wilder 40-0 with 39 knockouts. So it's going to be a two-fight deal once they figure everything out. First fight's going to be probably in London where Joshua is and then next one is going to be in the U.S. And it looks like the first fight, we're talking about 15 or so mil for Wilder with no percentage from the gate. These are all the terms that they're working out. But I'm so happy that we finally have a heavyweight fight again with the big guys, undefeated big guys, and going for the undisputed title.
These sound like DXL guys.
Yeah, they do. That's very true. We should have them in mind, right?
We should.
Yeah.
Work them into the read. Big boys.
By the way, Joshua, the early favorite at minus 200. Wilder, the plus 170, the underdog.
Big boy fight.
And I will go back to, I think it's interesting the fight's going to be in England because the crowds they've been drawn over there are spectacular. I think it's harder to separate for boxing right now in Vegas. You can put another fight in Vegas, but there's so much activity right now around MMA and so much activity around fighting in general. It's harder to separate. You put something like this at a Wembley Stadium, it makes it such a sight that the world will want to watch. I think it's more interesting.
And he has sold out stadiums out there. And by the way, every one of his professional fights has been in the United Kingdom.
It is just amazing because Vegas, we so often think of as the fight center of the universe. I think of every major fight, and obviously there are plenty of notable exceptions, but when it comes to most things, I think the general backdrop is Las Vegas. So nice to see it over there. You mentioned great crowds, and I'm with you, Dad. It's always the appeal of just seeing the biggest go at it. For whatever reason, that's like base level sports appeal. I want the biggest, baddest dudes beating the hell out of each other.
Well, and interesting because you think about the size of Wembley Stadium, and you mentioned that he's been selling out. Joshua sells out over there. The size of Wembley Stadium, yet it's a substantially smaller purse than Vegas, where the arena is much smaller.
Yeah,
so
it is. It is kind of.
It doesn't line up with any of your preconceived notions.
We're going to get it, and that's all that matters.
Well, that gets you caught up with what's trending. It's Golic and Wingo, presented by Progressive Insurance. Cars, homes, boats, motorcycles, RVs, and more at Progressive.com. I'm Jason Fitz in for Trey. Hanging out for the next couple of days, actually, with both of the Golics. So I mentioned it off the top and at the very beginning of the show, and it's interesting to me because we immediately skipped over a championship. And that's just the way society works today, right? We immediately started the summer of LeBron. There wasn't even a 24-hour grace period of let's kumbaya and hold hands and appreciate the dynasty that we may be seeing with the Warriors that we are seeing. No, we went straight in to the summer of LeBron, and all of the conversation immediately shifted from greatness to where's LeBron going to go next. And Kevin Durant has a quote through Yahoo Sports talking about how difficult this has been for him. And this is a quote. I feel like it's easy to be the best player when you don't have good players around you. I feel like it's harder to stand out when you have great players around you. It's an interesting piece of it because I read that as Durant saying, hey guys, look at me. I just won a second finals MVP. We just won a second championship in a row. We're doing something historic, and y'all aren't paying any attention. I read this as Kevin Durant being defensive about, hey, spend more time focusing on me. But, Mike, you read it a different way.
Oh, well, listen, I disagree with him. I think it would be harder to be And when we're talking about great, understand the level we're talking about. If we're talking about LeBron, we're talking about the best player, and in Durant, in my opinion, the second best player in the league. So which is more difficult to shine when you're playing with players that aren't as good or when you're playing with players that are good? You're playing with players that aren't as good. Everybody's trying to shut you down. You're getting the lion's share of the attention. You're getting hit as much as possibly can. When you're the best player or a great player on a great team, it gets evened out a little bit. I think you get a little bit more freedom than you do when you're the best player on a bad team. So I disagree with that premise, but I think overall, I think the bigger picture here, I think Kevin Durant's becoming a little more emboldened over the last couple of years than he has been, from the burner account to trying to hide behind something to being out front and saying some things.
You would hope that would come with the second time around, where the first championship may be more of a sigh of relief than anything else. The second championship would be that confirmation, that validation. That seems to be the word that we've been associating with Kevin Durant for this latest run right now. And I think you're right. I think that comparison, that idea of the best amongst the best or the best with nothing around it, forgets the notion of competition and where people can focus on that. I think that actually would make more sense. Let's say you were in a great band. If you're in a band with a lot of other really talented artists, it might be more difficult for you to stand out, for you to rise above the sound of the rest of the group, as opposed to being a great player in a bar with a bunch of schleps, which I know you have been a part of, Jason.
Both. Yeah.
In both situations. But it becomes interesting, and I heard Will Cain bring this up on his show the other day. This, in his mind, was more of a shot at Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant's former teammate, than it was at LeBron James. A guy who won an MVP on the back of being a solo act in a place where there wasn't as much around him, where there wasn't as much expected, as opposed to Kevin Durant, who came over to Golden State and has got 2 finals MVPs off the back of being the best guy on the best team.
You know what? I never thought of that one. That's an interesting take as well.
But is it possible that we've seen so much of Mr. Sensitive from Kevin Durant that we're just reading into, the rest of his quote, I pride myself on standing out wherever I am. I pride myself on working hard wherever I go, and I feel like these guys embrace me, and I feel like I'm a warrior. Like, he's not really saying anything super controversial there. We're just so used to him being super sensitive that we want to apply it.
Yeah, that line isn't, but the line about the great player on a great team, that is trying to justify being on a great team. Where I guess and listen, none of us have ever, well, maybe you were Juilliard at 10, so you were up in that high level. Mike, you and I were never at the high level of our sport, to where my thought is always, why do you need to say that? Why do you need to go down? What you keep feeling like, does he keep feeling like he needs to validate what he's doing because he went to this team when, dude, you're the second best player in this league, and some people think pushing the best player in this league. So not sure why you really got to, go down that road.
Ego. Think about this. Think about as confident as Kobe Bryant is. What have we seen out of Kobe? There's an article that came out in the Bleacher Report. Yeah. We saw quotes from him early in the playoffs. Kobe Bryant going through very great, subtle in his mind, I'm sure, but great lengths to remind us that he should also be in these conversations, that by many metrics in his mind, he has the greatness to be in the level with LeBron James and Michael Jordan. As otherworldly as Kobe Bryant's confidence is, he still feels the need to justify his existence in this realm.
Don't you think, though, it's reasonable, if you put yourself in Kevin Durant's mind, and you're 29 years old, right? You've won the MVP 2 years in a row for the finals. You've won a couple of championships. Don't you think it's reasonable if he looks back and says, okay, I'm going to make this move, to think at some point people they'll get off my back and they'll come over to the side of, hey, this is great and good for you. And that's never happened. He's become villain number 1 for the NBA because he made the choice to go to Golden State, a choice that was his.
Right.
And because so many people want to blame him for ruining the NBA, which is ridiculous, but that's where everybody wants to be on it. So I think there's a spot, even without being necessarily an egomaniac, where in a social media world where that obviously does trigger him, you're looking at it and saying, man, what in God's green earth do I have to do to get people to get off my back and finally give me a little love for what I'm accomplishing?
I guess my point is you don't have to say anything because, and to me, the difference of Kobe and Kevin Durant is Kobe's done. Out of sight, out of mind. So Kobe wants to remind you, hey, whoa. I know what's going on today. So don't just look over there. Look over here and what I did. Durant's still playing. We get to see Durant on the floor do what he does. I'm always amazed because I've known others not in the sports realm, in this, who were so good but so insecure. that it blows that I don't, and maybe because I'm never at that level, I don't understand that, but I'll never understand why do a burner account? Why do you got to answer critics? Why do you care?
Because we're still not paying attention. Think about it. Like you mentioned Kobe's not playing anymore, and that's right. He wants to stay in the narrative. Durant is. And we aren't giving it any due. We're not paying any attention.
Who is saying he's not the second best player in the league? I mean, are there people out there, or is it about the championship that they feel it's tainted?
Well, I think it's all of that, and I think it's just the idea that his move was still wrong for all these reasons, that people are still judging him based off that decision. And I'm sure for a guy that saw LeBron James overcome the burden of his decision the first time around, Kevin Durant's wondering, how can we speed this process up to get to me for that? Because he's got everything else. I mean, God, his GM is basically saying in these contract negotiations, blank check, do what you want. You get this. That's validation enough for most people to have their employer, to have their workplace put them in the highest tax bracket by saying this is how much we value you. But for Kevin Durant, that's still not enough because this is the way that guys at the top level of sport work.
I just can't imagine being the best player on a team that just won the NBA championship for the second consecutive year, that's getting this huge opportunity, that's shown for the second consecutive year he can carry a team to a championship. And after he wins that championship, the entire conversation is about the guy on the other side that lost the championship and where he's going
That's
next.
just not on Kevin Durant, though. That's just the expectation was they were going to win it. So it's like, ho-hum, they did exactly what we all thought they were going to do.
Well, when you're already triggered and sensitive, I feel for the
You know, KD,
because
you're a sensitive guy.
Yeah, call me, KD. We'll hug it out.
Golic
and Wingo.
and Wingo.
Mm-hmm. Trey Wingo and Mike Golic Sr.
It's Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2, presented by Progressive Insurance. All of our phone guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, and you don't want to miss Shefty coming up in just a few minutes. Adam Schefter will join us. We'll get into some of the NFL talk. But we've been talking a lot this morning about the NBA. And one of the things that we've learned in the last 24 hours is that the Warriors are definitely pushing forward a narrative that this championship wasn't as easy as it seemed as a team, or even specifically, check this audio out from Steve Kerr talking about how difficult this was for Kevin Durant.
Last year was sort of the honeymoon, and it seemed like he was engaged all year last season, whereas this year it was more of the fatigue of, trying to do back-to-back. The whole team, you could feel it with the whole team, where it was just harder. Everything was harder. Everything was more difficult. And not only was that true as a group, but for individuals as well. I thought it was a harder season for Kevin. Maybe the novelty of joining a new team had worn off. Maybe, he won the Finals MVP and we won a championship, and, then you're right back at it, and it's like, oh, wait, now you got to climb the mountain again. Like, it doesn't end. I think there's a feeling with some guys that when you win a championship, that solves everything. But it doesn't solve anything. It just gives you a great moment, and it gives you a ring, and it gives you, fodder for people's talk about your legacy or whatever. But life goes on, and you got to, get back up and keep doing it.
I think there might be some people that kind of, seriously, you guys had the best team. What could be hard about it? But in talking to, I've never been in that position of winning a championship and then coming back the next year to try and defend it. But we know plenty of guys that have. Oh, yeah. And they talk about how hard that is. You have now climbed the mountain. When you're climbing the mountain, you have that hunger to achieve what's at the top. And I know they had a title, a couple of years ago, but now they're trying to defend it. They win it. So there's that thought of you take a breath, a little bit, you exhale when nobody else is exhaling because they're trying to get to that spot. So I understand what he's saying, because just as it ends, I mean, basically you're gearing up because you went further. The last two teams played longer than anybody else. You got to start gearing up again after a shorter break than everybody else to do this all again. And you just did it 2 times in a row. And from Kevin's Durant's part, you're a 2-time MVP in the finals. So maybe it can be. And you're a human being. You're not a robot to try and get yourself motivated to do it again.
I just feel like we're dancing around the real story here. It wouldn't be this cryptic. It wouldn't be David West coming out and saying after this season season was harder for a lot of reasons, but never really hinting at it. If it was just the burden of trying to defend a title, I feel like it would be easy. But this tends to come up when things personally happen outside of basketball that guys have to deal with, or where there's interpersonal stuff. I mean, we may not have won championships, but you've been in enough locker rooms to know that a lot of the problems come when it's friction amongst players, and whatever that's derived from, whether that's playing time, whether I know for your teams in Philadelphia, it was an underperforming offense with an otherworldly great defense that sometimes looked sideways at those guys, and maybe with this team, it is Kevin Durant realizing, man, I am the best guy on this team. Does that make other guys on this uncomfortable? It just seems like we're kind of dancing around in this conversation and not getting the truth of, all right, was there some confrontation in this locker room, which has happened before. We remember the Draymond screaming match inside that locker room. There's strong personalities that comes up, but I feel like we're just outside of the truth.
And by the way, you want to check out the entire interview with Steve Kerr. It's on the Low Post podcast with Zach Lowe. Download and subscribe on the ESPN app and Apple Podcasts. You're listening to Golic and Wingo. Jason Fitz in for Trey, hanging out with Mike Golic and Mike Golic Jr. All of our phone guests are on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And to what you just spoke about, Junior, I will say, we talked to Mark Spears last night from the Undefeated on Spain and Fitz, and the word he used to describe the team after winning a championship was a sense of relief. And you think about all of the conversation about what that means moving forward. It doesn't mean there's great joy, but when you've dealt with what they've obviously dealt with, there seems to be some sort of a crack in the foundation of this that we're looking at. If it was the Patriots, we'd be flipping out about these sort of like, oh, you won't believe the stuff that's going to come out. I wonder if we just look at it and say, great team won a championship, who cares? If there's more to it, is there a component of some of these guys that are going to be anxious to move on and get something fresh, a new challenge, a new environment, a new atmosphere, because they just won their second straight championship and there doesn't seem to be great joy anywhere?
I think a lot of it can be relief, or is relief, as the fact that we're expected to do this and we did it. As far as going, this was interesting. The Cowboys 92-93, when they won back-to-back titles, and this was right when free agency hit, so maybe there was the newness of that when free agency hit in 93. You had guys all of a sudden, this was a new thing, and guys were getting offered more money to go play somewhere else, and they were like, okay, got a ring, get more money to play here, and these were starters, so they were already kind of starters and or stars, and I'm going to go play somewhere else and get more money, so I'm going to go. I don't know what that is for. I'm trying to think of what that would be for these great players on Golden State. Now, is it that, because let's be honest, it's Durant and Steph, right? Yeah. And then after that, it's Draymond and Clay. Now, when they have the ability to get max deals, are they getting those in Golden State, those guys? Or can somebody else offer them? Is that important to them? Because they're like, all right, I have these rings. What can I go somewhere else and do? But what else is there to do but win championships with this team, unless you want to go somewhere else and A, you're going to make more money, or B, you're going to be the man. And I don't know if Clay or Draymond go to another team and they're the focal point of that team.
Yeah, it's how much does legacy matter? Because in basketball, that seems to come up more than any other sport, is this idea of how much your legacy matters, because that's what we talk about on playgrounds and in barbershops and in radio studios, is all of that sort of a legacy conversation. Because in a league where there's a cap on what you can make as a player and a softer cap on what you can spend as a team, I feel like it's always going to skew a little bit, this idea of chasing money being all that valuable.
I think it's also harder for us to find out what's really going on in that locker room because there's less guys. Easy to keep everything tight and easy to keep lips closed when there's only a handful of guys in there.
Golic.
I tell you what, a great sports night last night, no doubt about it.
And Wingo.
What a day, what a show, what a time.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey everyone, Mike Golic here. Support for the Golic Wingo podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. Rocket Mortgage is simple, allowing you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS, consumeraccess.org number 3030.
It's a normal day. You're rushing out the door to get to work on time when suddenly, there it is, the dreaded service light. So what is it this time? Tire pressure, low coolant, time for an oil change? When it comes to service lights, head to Jiffy Lube. We've got you covered. Drive in today and make the switch to Pennzoil. Ask for Pennzoil Synthetics, getting you back on the road in a jiffy. Jiffy Lube, leave worry behind.
While nobody was paying attention, the Golden State Warriors won an NBA title, which should in and of itself be the conversation everybody wants to talk about. Comparing the dynasty to dynasties past, comparing Golden State to legacies of the past and teams everybody grew up watching, figuring out where Golden State's going to go, how this team's going to look for the future. But it's not about that. No, it's all about LeBron and the season of where LeBron's going, because everybody in the NBA seems to have an opinion on it, and it's all we want to talk about. It's Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN News, presented by Progressive Insurance. You can leave us a voicemail, 860-506-5505. This hour, Golic and Wingo, brought to you by La Quinta Inn and Suites. Book at LQ.com and win a business, and it comes, some of this conversation, we'll get into a few different layers of players from the past that are talking about it, but even players of the present, with Kevin Durant, and the quote that says, it's easy to be the best player when you don't have good players around you. Somebody chimed in and left us a voicemail on that. This is how it goes.
Yeah, it's talking about all these basketball players having to proclaim their greatness. One of the best quotes I ever heard, you don't have to tell people you're great. When you're great, they'll tell you you're great.
Listen, I agree with that, but I don't know if this is where we are with this generation. I hate to keep bringing it to a generational thing, but there are differences in generations. We do know that. That always amazed me. I'm not and never have been at that level of greatness, but I do know people, even in this industry, who I think are at the top of their game, at the top of the industry, who I know are somewhat insecure and need to kind of talk about it. And that always blows my mind with, wait a minute, what you're doing is kind of telling everybody and they can see for themselves. I never understood kind of the insecure kind of, I feel the need to tell you, or somehow, whether it's a burner account, which it was for a while with KD, or some other comments that to just what I'm doing out here, hey, it's really good, when we're watching you do it, we know that.
Yeah, but the generation gap to me is less about the players and more about their exposure. And the players of old didn't have the constant din of people in their ear the way that happens now when you're on social media, the way it happens now when we've got a 24-hour talk sports news cycle that's constantly going on. Time and pressure made the Grand Canyon. Enough time and pressure can wear down even the best of these guys and make them feel insecure and make them feel the need. If they're constantly getting just that little din of what you're doing is not quite good enough, what you're doing is not impressive, so-and-so did it better, this team's better than you, for you to feel the need to address something that may not really be an issue.
Well, and as much as we want to say it's generational, I want to say it's just part of the modern society we live in, because Brian Colangelo and his family are a perfect example of people that aren't, they're not young, they're not millennials, but they're out there, you get so worn down by what Twitter creates that you feel the need to defend, your legacy and what your work has accomplished.
I guess at the end of the day, when you sit back, can't you just realize you're never going to win? I mean, you're never going to please everybody. So if you see that one or two people that go against what you say, that you feel you need to answer that, I mean, there's no way you'll get 100% approval rate from people no matter what you do.
No, but it's always easier said than done. Like, we all sit here during the show and reply to tweets from one or two people that might have something to say. We're all guilty of it on a smaller stage. They just have a bigger platform and a bigger microphone thrown in front of their face a little bit more often with these kind of things lobbed at them. We're all human. We all succumb to this at one level or another.
Well, speaking of players that are constantly, chiming in on these conversations, we'll get to a former player that's chiming in on LeBron. But before we do that, let's get into a little of what's trending. Bryce Harper and the NL East leading Washington Nationals begin a 2-game series at the AL East leading New York Yankees tonight.
Bryce Harper has been interesting, leads the National League with 19 home runs, but really with the first 10 games, he was hitting .345, a home run every 5 at-bats, struck out just 11% of the time. Since then, he's hitting .210. He's is 15 at-bats for every home run, and he's striking out 25% of the time. Kind of didn't even realize, you just see him, with the highlights, him hitting the home run after home run, but he's been struggling as of late at the plate. for a team that a lot of people right now, odds are they and or the Cubs could be the team coming out of the National League, as well as either the Yankees or the Astros coming out of the American League as these two teams get ready to play.
Well, and the spotlight on them in a different sense now, because usually Washington area sports team would just sort of hand the baton of coming up short from one to the other. But now that the Caps broke the cycle, everyone wonders if you have that same sigh of relief that really a lot of people looked at the Indians after LeBron and Cleveland's first championship and the run that they made, getting them close to a World Series. Now, can the Nats be that next step with another superstar player that they have, like Alexander Ovechkin and Bryce Harper? Can they take the next step?
Well, let's remember the Nationals 15-16 at home this season, 21-11 on the road. So they're actually substantially better on the road. And part of what's interesting to me about that, it's not their pitching that's different, it's their scoring. They're getting about a half a run more per game when they're on the road than they are when they're at home. So it's something to keep an eye on at the series. I also think it's remarkable that we're sitting here having all of these conversations about what the Yankees might do going in to the trade deadline, when the fact is they're 42-19 and most seasons will be well set in a position where they're not worried about addition.
Right.
They're in a really good spot. But it happens to be this year that the East is so competitive that you can't just sit back and say, hey, you know what? Things are going pretty well.
They need a pitcher, though. I mean, so you got to get one of those.
Well, and you know what you need, and you're a team that we talk about the standard for all of these teams across the board. The standard for the Yankees is very clear. We had a small dip in that 2 summers ago. The standard is the standard, and they know what they need to live up to that, and they're going to make damn sure they do. That's
sort of a recurring theme in sports. We talked about that this morning with Golden State. We talked about it a little bit in the past with the Patriots. Yankees fall in the same category. Dwayne Casey agrees to become the Pistons coach. The quote, they made a compelling case as far as how we could do it together. He said that on the Stephen A. Smith show on ESPN radio. So Dwayne Casey, the new leader of the Pistons.
Yeah, 5-year deal, says he feels it's the right place to be right now, how they're going to go about their business. As Stan Van Gundy was also running basketball operations and being the coach. I just think in this day and age that's too difficult to do, you know, so I don't know how much more you'll see something like that. Maybe a coach, the big time coach coming out of college, if that's the control they want, they might get it, but not going to happen anymore in Detroit there as Casey takes over. So Toronto's still looking for a coach now as we speak, but Casey going to see what they can do in Detroit, a team where you just kind of hovers and you're just waiting to see what big moves can they make. They obviously, you know, trade for Blake Griffin and get him, but can they build on that and make themselves a contender? Because we talk about all these other contending teams in the East, you're not bringing up Detroit.
No, which is the perfect spot for Dwayne Casey because he's been living underneath that heat lamp for the last few years as expectations got ratcheted up for the Toronto Raptors, and it got all the way to the 1 seed, and he was the coach of the year, and he still got shown the door because the expectation was too high given what they were up against. The expectational here will be easier. He's already talked about wanting to help revitalize that downtown area in Detroit, wanting to help out in Flint. By the metrics he'll be judged upon, he's going to do really well in this spot, I think.
And it's interesting you mentioned sort of Detroit, and we don't talk about them in the East very much. Ryan Hollins was on ESPN yesterday, one of our favorite NBA guys here, and he talked a lot about the fact that Dwayne Casey is so beloved by players and that players enjoy playing with Blake Griffin. He thinks that this does make, over the next couple of years, Detroit a spot people want to go to play, which would be a staggering difference. So that comes down to why they made such a compelling argument to make the switch. The Pistons made the switch. Dwayne Casey, make the switch, brought to you by Pennzoil Synthetics, taking synthetic motor oil performance to a whole new level. Make the switch to Pennzoil Synthetics today. In golf news, Tiger Woods will hold his U.S. Open press conference at 11 a.m. Eastern on ESPN News today.
Yeah, so Tiger, again, I think his odds are at 20-1 now to win. The top is Dustin Johnson. That's who he's going to be paired with. Dustin Johnson, Justin Thomas, and Tiger are the trio golf in there. How about another one? Phil Mickelson, Rory McIlroy, Jordan Spieth as well. Some fun ones to watch. I think, what'd you say, Brett? On Friday, their tee time will be during our show, Tiger at 8 o'clock?
Correct. Trey will not be paying attention.
Trey will not be paying attention Friday for the last 2 hours of the show as Dustin Johnson, Justin Thomas, and Tiger will tee off at 8 o'clock on Friday. We'll have Tony Finau. Remember him, the dude who dislocated his ankle during the par 3 at the Masters. We'll have him on about 20 minutes as he gets ready for the U.S. Open as well. But I love this. I always love it when the course is hard. That's why I always love watching the Open more. The British Open, when they have those pot bunkers and the weather can be horrible out there. I love seeing the golfers humanized a little bit and have to play in those conditions. Now, certainly Shinnecock can be very, very difficult to play if you're not in the fairways, and we know the putting is going to be fast.
Yep, it's going to be great. Tony Finau maybe can give some advice to Tiger Woods on how someone is supposed to come back from an injury. Just pop it back in and keep it moving.
That was still unbelievable. Everybody remember that. I mean, Tony Finau running backwards after getting that hole-in-one and his ankle dislocates. He popped it back in. Unreal. And then finished 10th at the Masters. Incredible.
It really was spectacular to see. That gets you caught up on what's trending. By the way, maybe Finau can help me with some advice for the leadership.
No, not helping you because you're not going.
Yeah.
I'm still not.
It's hard to dislocate your ankle when you're not on a golf course.
Yep. So Stanzik and the team, we're going to go on our own. You guys don't even know this. We're going to go on our own leadership retreat. We're going to go do our own golf leadership retreat without you guys. How do you like them apples?
I really don't care what you do.
I just saw the whole rest of the staff. For those not watching on TV, the whole rest of the staff was vigorously shaking their heads. No, none of them want to go on a retreat with you.
Might I add, I'm paying and I'm bringing alcohol. See, I know the goal. That it's easy to get to these guys. It doesn't take much. Free food, free booze, and some golf. That's what we're going to do. We're going to do it ourselves. And you guys specifically are not invited. Speaking of people not invited to fun events, I don't think at this point, I think if LeBron was having a cookout, Kobe would not be invited at this point. And Kobe, Jr., you've talked a little bit over the course of the last couple of weeks when we've been together about Kobe sort of weaseling his way into whatever discussion there is, whether it's on Twitter saying, hey, everybody can talk about their championships, like my simple 5 rings. I mean, he finds a way to work himself into the conversation. And Bleacher Report was asking him a little bit. LeBron has 3 rings was the question. Been to more finals than any player in modern times, but he's 3-6 after this series. Does that matter to his legacy? And Kobe's answer is, all I thought about as a kid personally was winning championships. That's all I cared about. That's how I valued Michael. That's how I valued Bird. That's how I valued Magic. It was just winning championships. Now everybody's going to value different things differently, which is fine. I'm just telling you how I value mine. If I'm Braun, you got to figure out a way to win. It's not about narrative. You want to win championships. You just got to figure it out.
This is just brilliant wizardry by Kobe Bryant. He was part of a panel that Bleacher Report did this with Chauncey Billups and Paul Pierce and a number of other former NBA stars and some guys on our Jalen Rose. And Kobe's answers were about double the length of everybody else's in this because Kobe was making sure if we're going to judge greatness, we're going to judge it by the metrics that favor me. We should probably count championships. Did I tell you I have 5? How many does LeBron have again? Oh, that's right. You know what LeBron needs to do? Because they tried to ask him the question then, too, and this is where it got hilarious, is does he get credit for dragging the supporting cast to the finals? Where he got credit for dragging the supporting cast to the finals. And Fitz, you have that sheet of quotes right there?
So here's this. It even gets better. They were asking, how should we weigh a star supporting cast? Does LeBron get credit? The answer, Michael gave me some really good advice after the 2008 finals. You got all the tools. You got to figure out how to get these guys to that next level to win that championship. Going into the 2010 series, I said, listen, Boston, they got Ray Allen, they got Paul Pierce, they got Garnett, they got Sheed. The talent is there. They're stacked. That was the first super team. Michael kind of heard me lament about it, and he just goes, yeah, well, it is what it is. You got to figure it out. There's no other alternative, and that's the challenge LeBron has. You have pieces now. You have to try and figure out how to work with. Excuses don't work right now. Woo!
Yeah.
I mean,
Kobe's wizardry knows no bounds. Did you see him basically say, I beat the first super team?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
you
he
see
did.
me? I went through the original. This Golden State thing, they were doing this back in green years ago when I was still in the league, and I beat them.
So is there legitimacy to that, though, with Pierce, with Allen, with Garnett, with Sheed, and saying, you know what, compared to his team, they had the stars on that team, Kobe didn't. So
But there would be legitimate if he'd given specifics on how he did it. Because when he went into the next section, he said it has everything to do with how you build the team from an emotional level. How do you motivate them? Leadership's not making guys better from just throwing them the ball. That's not what it is. He goes into this non-quantifiable, you know what, you just got to lead. It's like suddenly if LeBron had thrown some magic leadership powder on top of J.R. Smith, he would remember the score at the end of a game.
I think it's hilarious in two regards. One, the idea that anyone would compare the greatness of that Boston Celtics team with what we're seeing with Golden State right now. Golden State, who has an argument and legitimate claim for the best team of all time versus that Boston Celtics team. Pass. Second off, speaking of passing, something Kobe didn't do that often. Kobe's best season assist-wise was maybe just a hair over 6 assists a game, which qualifies for maybe LeBron as a rookie when he was still figuring this all out. LeBron averaged what? Just a bit over 9 assists a game this last season. So this is, again, the brilliance of Kobe. Make it about something you can't quantify. I know more about leadership than you. I would take advice from Kobe Bryant on this aspect of things.
Yeah.
You can't dispute him in this. It's like the LeBron Jordan debate all over again. I can't prove this out in real time because it's something you can't quantify, so he automatically wins. I marvel at the job that Kobe did here.
Because all the other guys that were on this panel, they weren't doing this. Now, again, they don't have 5 rings and aren't going to go down as one of the all-time greats or where Kobe is going to be. I don't know every player on that panel, but nobody's going to rank higher.
No, it was Paul
right?
Pierce, Chauncey Billups, Jalen Rose. There were a number of other names, but no, Kobe was by far the name with the most clout on the list.
Yeah. But earlier in the show, you were talking about Kevin Durant, and you were saying, I don't understand why guys feel like they have to tell you how great they are. And that's essentially, not essentially, that's exactly what Kobe's doing. You're listening to Golic and Wingo. We're presented by 1-800-Flowers.com. Surprise a friend or loved one today with the bouquet from 1-800-Flowers.com. You guys, hint. When you order a dozen multicolored roses for only $29.99, you get another dozen absolutely for free. So you could get me 2 dozen roses since I didn't get to go to the leadership retreat. Just go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. It's funny that we look at Durant and we say, man, just accept your greatness. You got 2 straight finals MVPs. You got 2 straight titles. Just stop. Just go out there, be great, and don't worry about it. But then we've got Kobe over here saying, hey, guys, remember me? Well, I am fantastic.
Yeah, I think, again, listen, ego has never been an issue here. And I'm saying that completely in a bad way, but it does amaze me. But at least with Kobe, you can say, well, he's out of sight, out of mind. Though, by the way, his details what he does there in breaking down the game.
Check out detail on ESPN Plus.
Is
spectacular.
Oh boy.
It's great stuff.
He does a great job of that, but he does want to let you know what he's done. There's no doubt he is more proud of the titles he won after Shaq. I mean, no doubt about it. They couldn't play well in the sand together to be Batman and Robin because they both wanted to be Batman at that point.
So say the next part. Say the next part.
What was the next part?
You know the next part.
I don't.
What's the logical next step from that? He values those titles after Shaq left more.
I don't know.
What does that mean? Durant needs to leave.
But wait. But go ahead.
Well, everybody's different. I don't. That was from. Listen, here's why I don't agree with that, because Kobe never would have gone to that team. Kobe never would have gone.
So he needs to make
Golden
Steph leave.
State for the.
But on top, wait, but what about the other side of it?
Yeah.
Kobe and Shaq had such egos they couldn't coexist.
Right.
Steph and Durant are so egoless in that sense, they can absolutely coexist. We should be crediting the ability for 2 superstars on the same team to coexist because we've seen historically that's not easy. The problem is we don't want to give Durant any credit because he took the easy way out, whatever that stupid comment means. At some point we have to look at it and say Kobe and Shaq they couldn't get their egos out of the way. That's exactly what Durant and Steph are doing. That should be praised.
So that's why it's harder to be a great player on a great team?
Oh my God. So you're just going to keep going down this road.
I'm just saying, he just said it in a lot more words. KD just summed it up.
No, that's not what he said.
That's what he's saying.
No, I'm saying that we should acknowledge the sacrifice of ego. I think it's hysterical that we look at somebody like Melo and we say, you know what, all he ever cared about was the money. He doesn't care about winning, and that's not what sports are supposed to be about. And then you have KD come over here and say, well, I'll take less money to win, and we're like, oh my God, how could you take the easy road? Like
he gets flipped for that. And what do we think of Kyrie in all of this? Kyrie wanted out. I mean, he wanted out. He wanted to go be his own man in Boston. He couldn't play with, now, if you'd put Steph and Kevin Durant for a while on the same level, now Kyrie was playing great, but nobody was going to put him on the level as LeBron. But he couldn't deal with it. He wanted out, and everybody wants to blame LeBron for that one. Why didn't he go to management and say keep him? And I get it that LeBron has a say, can have a say in what's going on, but Kyrie wanted out, and Cleveland didn't have to let him out. They traded him away. They could have kept him, but they let him out, and Kyrie did not want to be there. And are we on Kyrie for that? Did Kyrie get a lot of garbage for that?
People like that alpha dog mentality. People want you to want to be the one, especially in this day and age and in this league.
Which is why, if Durant goes somewhere else, the funny piece of this conversation about Durant is that we've all decided he has to leave Golden State in order to get his own legacy. Where's he going to go that he could actually win a championship today? There's a handful of teams that if he went to, he could actually win a championship. Salary cap aside, hypothetical conversation. If he went to a Boston, a Philadelphia, if he went to a Houston, or if he went to LA with LeBron, he might be able to win a championship in those places. In all of those places, it wouldn't fix the narrative that he still needs help around him, because unless he goes to Memphis and wins a championship, we're not going to give the guy a break.
And he's not going to do that because he's finding ways to try and justify why it's a good what he's doing now, because it's harder for great players to play well with other great players, where Kobe wanted to get away from that. The Kyrie thing I disagree with. Kyrie was there. Kyrie was there before LeBron came back. LeBron came back there. They were teamed together. Do we think it's a feather in your cap to Kyrie to say, I don't want to be with LeBron anymore. I want to be my own man, instead of, hey man, we're together now. We can win some championships. See, I disagree with that. This whole macho garbage of, I got to go do it on my own, I can't do it with another great player, is ridiculous. Especially in this day and age where guys, more than one superstar, are together on teams. So we're supposed to applaud Kyrie for saying, I want to get away from LeBron and be my own man?
I'm just telling you, I'm not telling you what I think. I'm telling you what the general consensus tends to be among NBA fans, which is it's valued more when they watch you at least effort to do it alone. That's why we gave Kevin Durant so much freaking grief when he did this the first time around, because we saw it as him taking the easy way out. And people said with Kyrie, maybe I disagree with the move, but it's definitely not taking the easy way out.
Yeah,
he went and teamed up. Gordon Hayward, by the way, that was the intention. It wasn't like he was going to a place by himself. Right. So it was just this idea, I wanted out of that shadow, and I think there were people that appreciated that.
Well, we're going to be able to judge Kyrie in a few years. If the Celtics go on their own run when they get healthy and they find their way to a couple of championships, right, how different are we all going to look at all of this transaction in the meantime? So the debate will rage on.
Golic and Wingo.
It was all sort of one big giant Jell-O mold. It's very interesting where that went.
Turning his ankle at the par 3 contest. Trey started by asking him how the ankle is.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. Yeah, I feel great. The ankle's at 100% for golf, and I've been playing some good golf since then. So I'm excited to play in the U.S. Open. And as you guys mentioned, the toughest test in golf.
It takes a while, though, doesn't it? An ankle injury like that, rolling and dislocating it, takes a little longer sometimes than you think, doesn't it?
It really does. It's crazy. I've had some experience with sprained ankles, and for my golf game, I'm good. To get out on the basketball court, I still like playing basketball. I'm still maybe a couple months away from that. But overall, it feels great, and I'm happy that it does leading up into this U.S. Open.
Well, the two big stories in golf all summer long and all spring long clearly have been your ace and the dislocated ankle and finishing 10th, which will let you go back to the Masters again next year, and then some guy named Tiger Woods who's trying to win again. So those are the two stories. There's no question. And I heard recently you had a very interesting interaction with Tiger on the putting surface about wanting to get away and not having to do some stuff. And Tiger gave you the cover you needed.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Long story short, I was hungry. I was ready to eat some lunch. We were both putting on the putting green. I noticed hundreds of people starting to line up, waiting for him to sign autographs. So I just waited for him to make his way towards them, and just kind of snuck around him, and I head into I went into the lunchroom, and he noticed what I did, and I kind of stuck him with all his fans instead of kind of helping out with signing. So he came in the lunchroom and had some choice words for me, but it was all fun and games, and it was quite a funny moment for me. I'm still getting to know the guy, and he's he's really relaxed. He seems like he's really enjoying his time being back out on tour, and obviously playing some good golf. So it's a funny story, and one that I'll remember moving forward for sure.
Hey man, do what you got to do. I've always said about my friend Herm Edwards, who is from Monterey, California, you could literally commit a crime walking behind Herm and no one would know. So I get it. You did the right thing. Veteran move.
That's right.
Yeah,
right.
And it's good to get Tiger now at the fuzzy warm Tiger age, rather than a little more early on. How about this other thing? What did you do it in March? Talk about this Guinness World Record attempt of catching golf balls that you were hitting, or explain that one.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. So I had the opportunity with one of my sponsors, 18 Birdies, to break a world record. So I was on the hitting side of this. So I was hitting from 110 yards, 100 meters. And the world record is, catching how many balls can you catch under a minute from 110 yards. So, in golf, 110 yards is not very far. That's a pitch shot. It's a wedge shot. But when you're trying to catch a ball from that far, we noticed right away how hard it was to do. So it took us a few attempts. But, man, it was an incredible experience. One of the funnest shoots I've ever been a part of. And we were able to break the record. We caught, 12. I hit 12 shots in under a minute, and my guy Steve Tinoco on the other side catching the ball was able to catch 12 of them in less than a minute. So wow. It was an incredible thing, and really, really cool to be a part of.
That is neat. Can't spray your shots there, right? Got to really try and be consistent.
Yeah, exactly. There was a lot more strategy involved than I anticipated when I first got there. I had to hit a lot of good shots and make sure he didn't run around too much. So. I think a professional has definitely got to be on the hitting side and most likely a baseball player on the other side.
Tony Finau joins us, PGA Tour professional on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, getting set for the U.S. Open. Shinnecock Hills, one of the legendary courses that they play the U.S. Open on. Look, the rough is going to be like hay. The fairways are going to be running at a speed that you can't possibly imagine. What's the hardest part about preparing to play for a U.S. Open?
Yeah, I think the hardest part is just mental, more mental than physical. Your game is what it is. You try to get it prepared all season for some of the best, the toughest tests in the game. And the U.S. Open is definitely that. So I think, mentally, you have to just be prepared for a tough week and be patient with yourself. I think you can afford to make some mistakes, and you're going to. I don't know that anybody's played 72 holes in a major championship and not made a bogey, and especially at the U.S. Open. So you're going to make some mistakes, but trying to eliminate the big number and just mentally be prepared for a long, tough, grueling week. And if you can do those things and trying to stay patient with yourself, Sunday you may have a chance.
No matter what sport is being played, you always go into it with a game plan. So you're going with a game plan each day. How often does the game plan change during the round?
Yeah, it changes a lot because sometimes the way you feel, maybe you're not executing as well as you thought. Adapting is a huge part of life, and I couldn't say that any more true than even when you're playing the game of golf. You have to adapt when you're out there. A lot of times you're not going to have your best stuff, and your attitude has to make up for that. And I can't think of a tournament where that comes into play more than the U.S. Open coming up, just because of how tough they always set the golf course up. They mess with you. They mess with your mind when you're playing, and they try to set up the golf courses really as tough as humanly possible. So I'll be ready for that mentally, and hopefully my game and my mental side of the game is up to the challenge.
Well, listen, we know you'll be ready mentally, and we know you're tough enough to play. Your cousins are Haloti Ngata and Sione Pua, who both played in the NFL. And, of course, here's the game plan. Here's the secret sauce. In a practice round, dislocate your ankle, guaranteed top 10 finish at the U.S. Open.
Oh, my gosh, no.
All right, sounds good.
He's in. Yes, he's in. Show him how tough. There may be better players, but nobody's tougher than our guy,
God.
Tony Finau. Tony, man, we really appreciate you being with us. Best of luck at the U.S. Open.
Thanks, Tony.
Appreciate you guys having me on. We'll talk soon.
Golic and Wingo.
Let's not expect too much. There's only one person out there that's expecting way too much out of this guy too early. We know who that is. It's his father.
Delta strives to take the stress out of travel so you can focus on what comes next. And Delta Comfort Plus can help. With Sky Priority boarding, extra legroom, and a wide selection of unlimited complimentary snacks, you can arrive refreshed, ready to take on the world.
NBA insider and never get a break guy, Brian Windhorst. Windy, I'm telling you, at some point in life, you're going to get a vacation. But until then, we're going to ask you things like this. Your tweet last night, looking forward to the rumors of LeBron's children being enrolled in schools in Houston, San Antonio, Miami, etc. Next up, he's looking at houses in XXXXX. So any school rumors or housing rumors yet? Do you want to give us?
Well, there was a funny rumor started yesterday by Gary Payton that LeBron's kids had already enrolled in a high school in the San Fernando Valley in L.A., and I thought it was hilarious because LeBron's kids aren't even in high school yet, and his oldest son is going to be in 8th grade. So here's just a little tip in the LeBron rumor mill. If you hear about him being enrolled in high school, he's either skipped 8th grade, which is incredibly impressive, or it's bogus. And so in this case, it was bogus. Although that high school has an awesome team, and Kenyon Martin's son plays there, and Scottie Pippen's son plays there. So it'll be a great choice for him if he ends up in L.A., but it's going to be a year before he gets to high school. So keep that in mind for your rumor creation out there.
All right, here's another rumor. This is from a former Cleveland Browns player, Josh Cribbs, who said that that LeBron is going to lure Russell Westbrook to the Cavaliers.
Yeah, I mean, I've known Josh Cribbs since he was 18 years old. Great guy. Love him. And Josh Cribbs has this information how? I just checked. Russell Westbrook is under contract for 5 more years for $200 million. I don't think he's being lured anywhere, but I appreciate Josh. I hope he's doing well.
Talking to Brian Windhorst in the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. All right, Brian, let's keep the rumor mill going. Yesterday, you got the take-a-tude started. I know Stu Gatz was very jealous that you posited the idea that the first call LeBron should make this offseason would be to Kevin Durant. You want to expound upon that one for us?
Well, there's sort of a double season here. So between now and June 30th, it's really player recruitment season. This happened last year. We saw James Harden basically be the tip of the spear to execute the Chris Paul move. He was acting as an emissary of the Rockets, which upset people, but it's not against the rules per se. And so we're in the season now where free agents or even players are under contract sort of recruit each other. I mean, this goes on even before now, but now that the season is fully over, it's in wide swing. And the last couple of times LeBron's been a free agent, he's been a recruiter and been recruited. I mean, Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh got together when they went to Miami. Back in 2014, he called up Kevin Love and said, hey, you've asked to be traded. How about you tell the Wolves you want to be traded to Cleveland? I mean, he was a factor in all that. He's not a general manager in terms of like who's going to be the coach and who's going to get signed or traded, but he certainly has acted as general manager when it comes to teaming free agents together. And, he's going to, if you're a free agent and you're a guy like LeBron James, you expect to hear from all 30 teams. The Utah Jazz, the Sacramento Kings, the Milwaukee Bucks have to call LeBron, as they all did in 2014, because you have to check in. You have to do your due diligence. And if I'm LeBron, I got to do my due diligence with Kevin Durant. I got to reach out to him and say, hey, I know that you told Rachel Nichols that you're set to re-sign with the Warriors, and that's cool. And if you're going to do that, hope to see you next year in the finals again. But just in case you want to think about it, just want to let you know that it'd be great to play with you. I think LeBron, on some level, has to do that. Even though it looks like Durant's going to stay and he's very happy, he has no motivation to move. He's got 2 titles and 2 finals MVPs. He's doing great and sets himself up for a great rest of his career there. But, that's the only way that I see LeBron being able to go to the Western Conference and have the best team. Because even if he teams up with Paul George or even some other free agent, he's going to be going an uphill battle. And then if you rule out the West, then you go to the East, and the East has fewer options in terms of teams with salary cap space. So he's got a real difficult set of circumstances he's got to work through here. And by the way, it's going to take him some time to do this. Not only does he have to negotiate and talk with players, potential teammates and stuff, he's got to decompress from the season. It's not going to happen today or tomorrow, as much as everybody badly wants that, even former all-pro kickoff returners.
We're talking to ESPN NBA insider Brian Windhorst. And you know what, Wendy, I don't want it to happen quickly. I mean, we could spend weeks talking about this. So as much as every team should call them, given the salary cap or salary constraints that some of the teams have, how many teams are actually viable contenders to land LeBron in your mind?
That's where this is different from years past. You don't need salary cap space to get LeBron. You can talk LeBron into picking up his contract option and try to force a trade. He's got to do that, though, by June 29th. That's what Chris Paul did last year. That opened up a whole new window. However, it's difficult to pull that off. You know, it's difficult for a team to do it because it's against the rules, and you really need a player to recruit him. But it doesn't just have to be salary cap space. There are other ways to do this. The other thing is, in 2010, as just a reminder, the Cavs traded LeBron. LeBron did not sign with the Heat in 2010. That was a sign and trade deal. There was 4 draft picks that went to Cleveland because of it. You don't have to have cap space. It makes it much, much easier because, if you're adding LeBron James, you don't want to take pieces off of your team. And the Cavs aren't just going to do any deal. They have to do a deal that benefits them. But there are a lot of windows. There's 2 windows for LeBron, one between now and June 29th, and then one into July. And if he elects not to pick up that option, and by the way, he doesn't have to opt out. He doesn't have to raise his hand and say, I'm opting out. If he just does nothing, he becomes a free agent. So it may eventually get reported he's not going to pick that up, but he doesn't have to opt out. But so there's 2, he could make a decision and never become a free agent, or we could enter July and go through 10 or 12 days of him evaluating his options with the whole league on pause, waiting for it to happen.
All right, Brian, 2-parter here. First part of this question is, for Kevin Durant, if he stays in Golden State, wins a couple of more with this great team, if he does that and LeBron moves to another team but doesn't happen to not get another championship, do both their legacies get hurt with their different situations?
I think LeBron is completely comfortable with his legacy. I think he believes that his titles and what he has accomplished have fulfilled what he's wanted. I think at this point he's just trying to find some happiness, trying to find some comfort, and that comfort may still be in Cleveland. I mean, I think it's a mistake to take the Cavs off the board. I think the Cavs are under serious threat from several teams, but I think the Cavs are absolutely still on the board for him. If all things were equal, he would like to stay home. I just don't know if all things are equal. But in a way, and I know that this sounds like circular logic, and honestly, I really don't care what anybody thinks, but every time, the greater the Warriors are, the more valuable the 2016 championship becomes. I mean, in my mind, the Cavs' 2016 championship is aging more beautifully than any championship of the last 15 years because the Warriors are such a juggernaut. The fact that they were able to pry one away from them and LeBron being able to do it down 3-1 only makes that championship more valuable and only, makes his legacy more secure. Now, there are 1,000 people out there that can hammer away on LeBron just to waste time during the day about his legacy. But what LeBron does with this free agency in his mind, and really, guys, his mind's all that matters here. His mind does not affect what his legacy is.
All right, the second part of that real quickly was anybody that wants to get on those guys about their legacy, I would, Wendy, just give them Shaq. Shaq played for 6 teams, won 4 titles, and nobody ever brings that up when we start talking about where Shaq belongs all time.
That's true. I don't think the Shaq's ending of his career was as dignified as he would have liked it to be. I think he would have preferred just to stay put, maybe one more. But let's put it this way. LeBron's free agent decision this time will not be based on whether he's worried about his legacy, about places he's played. There's a lot bigger factors in play. And, again, that's something we can all talk about to kill time. We wait for his decision, and that's fine. But it's not something that's entering his mind.
It's awesome stuff, as always. Follow him on Twitter, @Windhorst ESPN. Wendy, one of these days you'll get to just sit on the beach and enjoy a fruity beverage. Until then, we appreciate your work, my friend.
Thanks, Brian.
Take care, guys.
This has been the Best of Golic and Wingo podcast. You can listen or subscribe on the ESPN app, Apple Podcasts, or just ask your smart speaker to play Golic and Wingo. Plus, you can check the guys out live weekday mornings from 6 to 10 Eastern on ESPN Radio and on ESPN News.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I feel like a whole new person.
Disclaimer, you will not become a whole new person. This is impossible. You might be able to join a gym or diet program, buy a new wardrobe, get hair implants, but your DNA and physical form will remain the same. Geico waives any and all liability if you attempt to become a new person, except a cyborg. If you choose to become a half-human, half-cybernetic organism with lasers for eyes, the Geico legal team would be cool with that, because, quote, laser eyes are pretty sweet. Pew, 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 end quote.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.